Okay, so I just want to talk for a second. I've made videos and it's just like I'm always afraid I'm saying the wrong thing, and I think technically you should write things down sometimes, but sometimes also there's nothing wrong maybe with just doing something just to be able to free your mind, as as the In Vogue song once said, um and still says. I really like that song. And it's a song that is kind of influenced through an older sibling. So you know how through osmosis sometimes you will like things from an older sibling, or through osmosis you will have references from a younger sibling. Okay, did I watch Hannah Montana? No, but do I know Party in the USA because of a younger sibling? I do. Okay, so basically, what I'm saying is that I am working at Walmart now, and it's representative of all of the times in my life that in my family system we have done unjobs, but just out of purely survival. So not actually reaching the potential that we have. And so it's very interesting that at this point in my life, I meet this unjob and there's the opportunity for it to transform into things going towards my potential. At the same time that there's a development of the awareness of the system that has birthed me. And it's a very painful thing, right? Because to be older and to start to become aware, that's very it's very dissonant because you associate awareness with infancy, and to have something that you experience in infancy in an adult form, that almost feels criminal. Um, And yeah, it's very painful. So I want to say really fast, give an example, and I want to talk also probably at some point about current things that are happening. But actually, I guess this video, without me realizing it, is really going to be primarily to give this example. This is very important because it's really important to analyze your life to start to understand what's happening. Um, that experiences aren't just data. Data isn't just data. You know, we can make connections and come to draw conclusions and learn from these things. And so that's something that I experienced at Walmart, where I saw a little girl with her grandparent, and it's a male grandparent, so a grandfather. And, you know, in that moment, I was in self checkout, checking the registers to make sure, people were not, you just check to make sure that they're paying and all of that. And put in the date of birth for an ID, or if they're 18, or all these different notifications, voids if somebody needs to void something. And basically, I'm standing there and I just suddenly kind of keel over a little bit on the little drink refrigerator with the Red Bulls, um and yeah, and I actually had a reaction because I realized that I don't have that type of family connection. And part of me reverting to the mean is reverting to, literally, if you start to map, think of it like a graph, right? Think of a family system like, how the solar system is with the different layers, right? Like, yeah, if you think of it like a map and looking at how all of different outcomes for girls and women in my line of unexpressed potential, or sexual violence, or lowered potential. And how does this connect to, grandfather, right? But what I'm saying is that I don't have grandparents in that way. And I've met one, right? But don't also have a real connection with this person. Whereas my mother didn't talk about her parents really very much. I never met them, talked to them on the phone maybe one time. And this is in Nigeria, right? So, you know, I'm bicultural, but I also say I'm a Nigerian girl, but I say I'm bicultural. I've got like a two in one identity, and not like through the title of bicultural. That's technically two in one. But no, like, I know that I represent two identities fully. Whereas usually things converge, but I do feel a lot of times that I am two different things. And I'm like basically mathematics. I'm like one where I could say I'm a Nigerian girl, but then I'm also a second one where I could say that I'm a bicultural person. And I wouldn't say, I don't know if I would use the term African American because that term's kind of already taken, right? So I tried to figure out what would fit for someone like me, which technically, yes, obviously nominally African American would be the term. But because if I have African American identity or Black American identity and Nigerian identity, yes, African American would technically be the term. But I think that's what it's interesting, because if you do look at it like math, it's always important to aggregate data and look at different experiences within that. And so, yeah, I guess I'm thinking in that type of perspective of seeing, well, this term is not representative of the different experiences that could fall within that term. And there's different permutations and combinations for different Black identities that could also fall within that term. And so where do you draw the line? And so I think that's the question that people are asking today. But why I felt so bad is because I realized I didn't have a transmission of information and identity through grandparents. I had to face the fact that I never met a grandfather specifically. I never had this male transmission. And when you also carry a history of harm and violence and sexual violence specifically towards girls and women, there's some of that with boys as well, But I think it's more towards those of us who carry a vagina, okay? But like I say, we also do have to know that little boys are harmed as well. And so I'm saying that, okay? And that's something that has shown up also in my line. So our line. So basically, it's painful because there is a lack of transmission. There's a lack of transmission of possibility, identity, story, legacy. So when you have that, you are having a break. You are not having a connection, and you're having roots that don't have roots. So it's almost like you're being birthed in a petri dish or like in a test tube or something, where you're born, but you're born outside of what has actually made you, yet you still carry what has made you, if that makes sense. So that was why I think it was so painful, because also, in addition to the grandfather thing, one I know is because of the violence that they have perpetuated. The other I never met and don't know anything about. And that's an example of silence, transmission of silence or shame, or not sharing a story or history, not sharing why you're not going to share the story or history, right? And that what can happen with that is that things can still come up and turn up and you won't know why you're having issues or something. But sometimes it can be because of those silences that haven't been expressed, and it's expressing itself in the next generation because it's still energy that has still transferred down the line. Then grandmothers, I don't have the girl transmission, specifically what I need, okay? I don't have the girl transmission of knowledge. And the one that I've met, there's a picture in her home of me at 3 years old in a dance costume. And quite honestly, that was decades ago at this point. There's been no update, no knowledge of the fact that I have a performance in 3 weeks. When I was tutoring at Georgia Perimeter College, no acknowledgement of the fact that actually, why am I tutoring at a community college when I graduate magna cum laude with the full scholarship from a prestigious 4-year institution, or not 4-year because I took a year off, so it did take me 5 years, but a prestigious institution. And what you end up having to do is, like mathematics, you have to work backwards and start to figure out, oh, okay, well, if there are these silences here, what does that mean about me? What that means is that you end up reverting to the mean, which for a girl or woman in our line is unexpressed potential or harm, silenced harm, abuse, shame. And so that's what I did. I was less than what my potential was for many years. Of course, it helped me to pay for dance classes and have a non-traditional schedule, but the truth is I ultimately had no guidance as far as what I was capable of. Okay. And that's more, I'm just going through that, but it's very painful because the girl transmission of what did you go through at your time in your life? What was your story? What is your story? And having to hear stories from others, that also feels really sad because you want someone to be able to tell their own story. You don't want someone to have their story told and you learn the harms that they've experienced by proxy. Because then what happens is that I am telling a story that's not even from the own person's mouth. And it feels like a form of erasure. So it's very painful. That instance really hurt because having to recognize part of why I guess I get to play the level over again and work at a place like Walmart as I'm pursuing Act 1 goals is understanding how something like this will come into my orbit to have to even play the level again, so to speak. Um, and this is why when you don't have a story transmitted, it's going to take a long time before you figure things out, and even then you might not even figure things out, or you might not figure everything out. And patterns will repeat. And if there's patterns that have been unexpressed in silences and erasures, those will definitely repeat. And that's something that working at Walmart, even though it is funding my goals, I'm doing my modeling classes and hopefully with things layered on, and I have my ballet lesson tomorrow morning. And then, God willing, I'll be able to layer on my actual other intellectual goals, but one thing at a time, right? Um, but yeah, that's all I want to say. And it's important to know where you come from, even if it's something that's not good. It's important to know, and within a safe way, right? Because sometimes, yeah. So that's all I want to say. Um, all right, all right, and then hopefully I'll be able to talk about something that is more, I don't know. Okay, because there's lots happening, but I guess I just ended up talking about this specifically. Okay. All right, have a good night. Let me go ahead and get to what I also needed to do tonight and then wake up in the morning.